The background to myself. So I am a independent beef and sheep consultant and live over towards Lincolnshire. I used to previously work with AHDB and I've been on my own for about 15 months or something. What's interesting, so I've known Nick for a few years and I've known James for a bit longer. And so what we're really trying to talk about this evening is a lot to do with regenerative agriculture, and some of the questions that will come out of tonight, or answers as well, is what does that really mean and why we're interested in it and what bits do we not know and where should sort of future research questions be driven. So my particular background is I come from a family beef and sheep farm, an arable farm. But my sort of academically, I'm sort of technical background on beef and sheep, but have a real love for grass and forage and particularly grazing systems. So most of my time at now talking to various people about beef and sheep systems and what to do with grass. And we'll come, Nick, do you want to introduce yourself and then we'll have a bit of a chat about carbon calling?
Yep, okay. So I can hear myself. Why can't I hear myself? Why can't I hear myself? So I'm Nick Renison, and Paul and I, we farm up in Cumbria, near Penrith. But I was brought up on a dairy and sheep farm in Oswestry in Shropshire. Always kind of not obsessed with farming, that's the wrong word, but always wanted to be a farmer, but I couldn't handle my dad. So I did various jobs related to farming, and I did work at home for a long time. We had a milk round, and then various things. I met Paul, and he's more always been more hemp underpanty than me, to say. I think. So we now farm, and we've got a farm since 2012. We've been going down this regenerative route, and alongside all this, I work for AHDB and have done for the last 3 years in knowledge exchange. And I suppose I've got a passion probably in getting farmers to talk to each other. So that peer-to-peer learning. And this is all where this idea came from. And then it probably links to carbon calling, which we're organising in August. Liz, do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so quite a few of us went to Groundswell last summertime. And it was the first time I'd been, and what I was really impressed with was the sort of relaxed atmosphere. So people were there really interested in those ideas, but it was a very different approach to how people were taking on information. So unofficially, I was up with visiting Nick to doing some work up there, and we started thinking about the idea of what could Groundswell look like if we were sort of targeting more towards livestock farmers and particularly a bit further north. And Groundswell is, I would say, arable farmers who have livestock, and carbon calling was very much targeting towards livestock farmers who are interested in improving soil health and thinking about how red meat can be part of the solution rather than sort of being demonised as it is was in the last few months. So that's where the sort of idea came from, and it's developed from then. Our challenge obviously with everything at the moment, and part of the reason why we're using this technology, is coronavirus and whether we will be running that event on the 18th of August up in Cumbria. Our intention at the moment is to make a decision on that mid-June. But I'm also, as we all are, quite aware that at the end of this, people will be quite ready for wanting to get together and sort of have a conversation about how this year's affected them. So that's why I'm particularly interested in carbon calling, is that I do quite a lot of work with people who are talking about conventional grazing systems, so sward height driven or set stocking, or doing relatively short perennial ryegrass swards, or doing going in at 10 to 12 centimetres, 3,000 kilo, whatever. But I'm also interested in a whole different group of people who are also interested in herbal mixes and really different approaches. And I was finding that they were in slightly different camps and were throwing stones at one another to say the was wrong or the other one was wrong. So part of the role of carbon calling is to bring that range of opinions together and actually accept that although they're different, they're not wrong. And so we can all learn from what we're all doing, really. And generally, us having a conversation about what we're farming or how we're farming it leads to improved knowledge somewhere else. So very much echoing what Nick said about farmers talking to farmers.
But regardless, a carbon calling will happen at some point, won't it, Liz?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, if it's not just a massive excuse for a party, if that's the case, then yeah, we're all there in a shed in August, wearing us masks and PPE.
But also, I think this now is a good time to have these conversations and set things up like this, because everyone is possibly a bit sick of their family. You're all at home and available, and so we just thought we'd give this a try and see how it goes. Sam and James are our first, I'm not saying victims, but first guinea pigs in the experiment.
Yeah, and I think it's about as I said, it's appreciating how farmers are farming in lots of different ways, and we'll all learn something hopefully from this evening. So what we'll do is we'll start with James, and we'll come to him and just ask him to do a bit of an introduction to sort of in the last few years where you've come from and where are you now in terms of what stock you're managing and how you manage it.
Yeah, okay. My name is James Evans. I farm in southwest Shropshire, Bishop's Castle. So we've got a family farm that's 900 acres, and then about 20 years ago we took on a contract farming agreement where I live now, and that's 1,400 acres. And that was going really well, and that was fine. And then about 5 years ago, the owner decided to sell up, and some new people took the contract on agreement on, which was great. And we just carried on farming the way we were doing, farming stabilisers, suckler cows, and clean sheep, and running some arable as well. And it was going good. We were feeding intensive bulls and sort of trying to push the boundaries and trying to get up to 2 kilos a gain per day and things like that. And then the new owners dropped a bit of a bombshell on me and said they wanted to go organic. And to be honest, the thought, horrified me. But it was a case of, well, either I've got to do it or they'll find someone else that will. So, yeah, after doing a lot of soul searching and sleepless nights, and I think probably chatting to Duncan Nellis, I think Duncan's on the line, he kind of reassured me, really, because he said that, well, he wouldn't farm it any other way, but even if he had the choice. And I thought, well, if he's doing it and he's still getting the output from what he's doing, there's no reason why I can't. So I've probably, like any reformed character, I've probably gone one step further and trying to go, a bit more extreme, perhaps.
And do you think it was affected because it was coming from someone else? It was your owners, wasn't it, that was driving it, rather than you deciding really? You didn't necessarily have an epiphany, did you? The epiphany was put upon you.
And I thought a lot about that, and I thought, we as farmers, we actually don't like change. Although I've always changed and tweaked things over the years, to do wholesale change is quite alien to me anyway, and I think it is probably for most people. And so to, literally sort of jump out the frying pan into the fire, it was a huge leap, and probably if it was left to myself, I wouldn't have done it. But looking back now, it's probably the greatest move that we've ever made.
And suppose, and I know at the time you didn't probably break it down into steps, but what was the first few things that you helped you sort of start that process?
I got some help, not mentally, but and I probably needed that. I got a consultant in. Obviously, I would have got you in, Liz, but you weren't available at the time. I used James Daniels' precision grazing, and for the first 12 months, really, looking back now, it was more of a hand-holding exercise. He wasn't probably telling me too much I didn't already know, but when you're jumping into the unknown and trying to grow grass without fertilizer for the first time, and it's that reassurance that you can. Whereas I think, as a farmer, it's a big leap of faith to all of a sudden do something that you're not actually sure of. And when employing someone else that will come in and just reassure you, it's money well spent, really.
And for you, what was the sort of a couple of years in, I suppose, what was the sort of indicators that it was working, that it was sort of, I suppose it wasn't as terrifying anymore, something had shifted, I suppose?
Yeah, like, I think from obviously a contract farming agreement, everything is accountable, everything is costed out. And in our 2 years of conversion, to be honest, the accounts weren't looking particularly special because we were obviously farming organically, we were going through conversion, we didn't have any conversion payments, and we wouldn't be selling at an organic premium. So it wasn't looking too great. And then after the first year, the guy that does the sort of manages the contract, shocked me really and said, actually, the accounts are looking really healthy because you haven't actually bought anything. Yes, production is down, but basically we've stopped paying bills. Nothing's coming down the farm drive. We weren't buying any fertilizer, any sprays, any feed, and you realise, perhaps that is the key to making more money, rather than focusing on maximum output, which I was trying to do previously. Actually, reducing the inputs is probably far more profitable.
James, can I just ask, prior to this, how conventional were you? Were you what was your view of organic?
Yeah, I thought organic farming was a lifestyle choice. I didn't think it was a proper way, a business way. I sound foolish saying that now, I know, but my take on it was more of a lifestyle choice, and perhaps it wasn't. It was usually funded by somebody who'd got an outside income and things like that, especially in the beef and sheep sector anyway.
Yeah, okay.
But in terms of, so that's, and you're still selling bulls, aren't you? But you're starting to sell them on different characteristics, or not necessarily just on different feeding systems?
Yeah, I mean, we're selling all our bulls now completely fed off grass. So we're finishing all the cattle off grass, and we're doing all the bulls off grass as well, because obviously I don't want to start feeding cereals. And then it kind of got me thinking, really, if we want to try and breed a good sort of stabilizer cow that does well on forage, actually we need to start looking at the genetics that perform on grass. And I think there's probably a slight gap in where EBVs lie, in the sense that the 200-day growth and 400-day growth and muscle depth and fat depth is quite often based on a cereal-based diet, and I think it's a different type of animal that actually fleshes off grass. That when you're feeding everything on cereals, you take out a lot of anomalies, and it's quite clear to see that there's certain animals that don't actually perform on grass. So we're trying to weed those out and not breed from those.
Are you doing a similar thing with your sheep or not? Is it most of your focus is on the beef side?
Yeah, I mean, we're not pedigree breeders of sheep. We're just commercial sheep breeders, really. So yeah, we're trying to fatten all the lambs off grass. And I think the more that we can buy grass-based genetics, and I think there's I think the sheep industry is a lot further forward than the cattle industry as far as the grass finished, and people have been selling grass-fed rams for years, haven't they?
And I suppose the $64,000 question: what does regenerative mean to you? So if you're described as that, or are you described as that, and what does it mean to you?
It's a bit of a weird one, really, isn't it? When you start saying, when you talk grazing, you can actually put a label on pretty much, your cell, your paddock, your regenerative, your techno, your whatever. Well,
we like labels. We like defining ourselves as something.
I know, and you've got to be a certain type of person, haven't you? You've got to be. But I think we do a bit of everything. So we do some regenerative grazing in really tall grass and mob grazing it and doing all that sort of stuff, where we really want to improve the soil health. And then actually, where we want maximum grass growth, we're going in more conventional at 2.5 and coming out at 1,500, and I think we'll just play around with it, because I thought about the way that we graze, and a lot of what we're getting is from the Americans, and I think we're in a far better place than where they started at. I mean, their organic matters were super low, and they've got this obsession with building obviously organic matter, whereas we're probably at a far better starting block than what they are. I mean, we've got organic matters of 6, 7s and 8s without actually sort of improving it just through mixed farming. So I think we need to try and just forge our own way. I think, yes, there's lessons to be learned from what the Americans are doing, but I think the British way will kind of fudge our own way through, I guess.
I think the bit that's interesting is the bit of the world I'm from, which is very much more arable focused. I'm quite rare to be on a mixed farm over this bit of the world, which is you realise how poor some of those soils are compared to those soils that have been. We haven't necessarily focused on soil health, but by incident we haven't necessarily been quite so detrimental to them as the arable boys potentially. Well, no, more than potentially, we haven't been. And so in terms of, so where do you see yourself going then? What's the next step? Is it refinement? Is it more cows? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we've taken quite a lot of arable land out and put it down to sort of herbal lays, and we realised that we probably didn't go extreme enough, and we just, at the start, we put in a herbal lay, but it was just a ryegrass, plantain, chicory and clover lay. And now we've gone, and put in as much variety as possible. And I think we've started looking at, I know it sounds a bit herbs and honey, but yeah, looking what the animals eat. And it dawned on me sort of last year that we got this fantastic herbal lay that had been in arable for 20, 30 years. And it looked fantastic. But the first thing the cattle were doing was grazing underneath the hedge and eating all that old grass first. And so it made you realise actually they select it far more than what we give them credit for. And actually every time we take the cattle back to weigh them, that they're selecting different things in the hedges each time. So sometimes they'll be going for the ivy, sometimes the cleavers, And so I think as much variety as we can put in, the better.
So it's and so do you think that at the minute that's bringing seeds in, isn't it, in terms of buying seeds in? But do you think you'll end up actually with more permanent pasture, with more diverse lays by bringing back the older types of grasses or not?
Yeah, and I think probably a lot of species will come back naturally. I think I see the place of herbal lays initially of repairing arable land and deep rooting and doing all that great stuff, but eventually I can see herbs perhaps not lasting quite as long whether they're grazed out. But I think once they've done that initial sort of soil busting regenerative, perhaps there isn't a need for them. I don't know.
We've got a few questions around actually soil and soil health, so it might be a time to just throw them at you. It also makes it look like I'm not ignoring what I'm supposed to be doing. So on the soils, I'll start with the last one first. Have you found any differences in your soil health under cell paddock grazing compared to your tall mob grazing with herbal lays, or is it just grazing management of ryegrass based lays?
Yeah, I'd love to say that we're seeing a dramatic difference already, but I think it's like anything. When you start looking, it's like, to be honest, our worm counts have gone up dramatically, so we're noticing that. We probably haven't been studying the soil enough, but it does make sense. When we're digging now, you can see that the rooting has increased massively. So I think it's probably a bit too early to tell, but I think the early indicators are, the more sort of taller grass and deeper rooting it is, the bigger impact it's having. Yes.
So on that, we also had a question: how are you measuring your soil conditions? How are you looking at the ecosystem processes, or are you doing any measurements?
Well, I'm a bit since going organic, I've become very sceptical of everything and everyone, and so when someone gives you a soil analysis, most of the time, looking back, it was probably someone selling you fertilizer, and they'll tell you what you're short of and what you need to buy to put on it. And maybe that's right for maximum yield, but actually, is it the right thing for soil health? And we've just been part of a pilot study for the new Elm scheme, and the National Trust carried it out, and they did a really some big soil analysis, and it was quite heartwarming really to see that they were low in P and K, and probably could do them with a bit of lime, but actually they did microbial activity and actual soil health, and we were in a pretty good place. So it's a bit of a weird one. Do we need to sort of redefine on what we're actually testing our soils for? Is it for NP and K, or is it microbial activity? Is it a different type of test?
I think you are doing those earthworm counts, aren't you? Which is it's basically like counting the number of lines in the Serengeti. It's an indicator of that sort of top predator within that soil. So you are sort of monitoring that, aren't you? The challenge, I suppose, you've also got is this isn't set up as a scientific experiment, was it? It was set up as a system change. So
yeah.
In turn, we would have done lots of different tests when you started, but we are where we are. So it's what's interesting is that what is the difference between your tall grass grazing versus your more cell grazing? But as you already said, you're doing it for different reasons, aren't you? You're trying to build organic matter in certain places. So the questions are different anyway.
Yeah, and I think the way that we're going to do it, I mean, I have a different plan every month, but the way it goes, I think in a good grass year, when we've made enough silage and we're good for grass, we will just do, tall and mob grazing. But then in a shorter year, and if we have a drought, we'll probably have to be better and go in at low residuals and just work the farm like that. And if there's certain fields that aren't performing, we can just mob graze it 3 times that year and leave it alone and try and improve it like that. And just I know it's a cliche, but sort of holistically work the farm as where it's needed, but still try and maintain stock numbers and create a profit as well. That's the be all and end all of it all, really.
Just 2 more. I should have really started this with a pre-apology. Your questions are starting to come thick and fast, and I think we mightn't get through them all. So hence why I'm using a leprechaun. I don't want to get the people to identify me if they don't ask their questions. So I think there was one's about have you noticed any difference in the performance of your animals, say to organic? Are they has the performance changed, improved, or is your output still the same?
Yeah, I mean, that's another one that we changed our system as we changed organic. So before we were intensively feeding bulls, finishing them at 12 months old, to castrating them as steers and grazing them and finishing them at 24 months. So it's probably not a fair indicator. I mean, obviously performance levels have gone down in the sense they're not putting on the same growth rates, but it's a completely different system, and we're still learning. I mean, I think finishing cattle off grass is a real art, and you can think that they're doing it brilliantly, and then whereas actually you realise that feeding cattle inside on a TMR is pretty foolproof, really. Whereas with grass finishing, you're so the weather can dictate so much, the variety, the field, you move them to one field, the worm burden, and some of the lays that we were grazing last year that had been in arable, the grass was fantastic, but the cattle weren't performing, and we couldn't work out why. And this was the same field that they were grazing all the outsides of the field as well. And what we found out after doing some tissue samples of the grass was it was completely depleted of any trace elements. And so they were so short of trace elements that they were actually they had no immunity, and so they were getting worms quickly. So it's all these things, it's a learning curve. So yeah, so we probably the lesson I've learned going on grass is that we probably got to double up on trace elements and bonuses in the short term until we can get all our lays established and deep rooting and pulling stuff back out from the soil.
And that's your ambition, is to reduce inputs as much as you can, but obviously without compromising performance.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're always going to be short of selenium in this area. It's known it's short in the water and everything like that. So I don't think we'll ever get away with a lot of things. But I think looking back, that our grass was never capable of extracting what the potential was in the soil, because we were obviously feeding it with fertilizer. The roots were very short, so it was never really going to access what was down there. So, you know, I think, going on to my conspiracy theory as well, that, you know, when people sell you fertilizer with added selenium in it, it's kind of, we're just stuck in that loop really of being sold a bit of snake oil.
On that note, Joseph, any other questions? No, but I think we have to remember that those industries, like we were saying about your dad or the generation before, a lot of what we're doing is nothing new. They didn't have access to that fur or the chemicals and all of that. We are relearning some of those techniques.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we've been caught in thinking that, you know, looking back, that trying to maximise output, headage payments, it's all moulded the way that we farm and the way that we think is to try to maximise output is maximum profit, and it isn't. And I think if we just, you know, jump off the wheel a little bit and take a look at what we're buying and what we're trying to achieve, we're better off for it. But like I say, I wouldn't have done it unless I was coerced, shall we say.
Yeah, so it's about that external factor that drives that.
Yeah.
That epiphany, I suppose. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Nick, who's going to have a chat with Sam now. Thanks, James.
Thanks, James. Sam, are you ready to rock?
Yeah. So yeah.
So the reason why I thought you would be really good for this first one is that because you're dairy and it's relatively easy to go down this route with beef and sheep. I think dairy is tricky and there's not that many people doing it. So I thought that's why I think you've got quite a unique story, really. So I just wondered, from where, could you just explain from when you went to college and then can you just tell that story about how you left college and went down one path and then kind of did a bit of a circle?
Oh, yeah, it's a few years ago, but I won't try and go right back to college because, it's a little while ago. But yeah, I mean, you come out of college, you know, that time it was, you know, very TMR is the best, you know, controlled diet. So, you know, I went back home, done quite a lot of reseeding, which, you know, just typical ryegrass plus, and done quite a few fields like that. And I was fairly keen to go and get a feeder wagon and, you know, mix it and control it like that. And then at some point, I think, you know, we got the yields up as well, and I was using, you know, Holstein seed, and I got into AI, all the rest, like a lot of, you know, farm kids and that, you go into that sort of side of things. And then at some point, I think I just realised that there was more to, you know, more to life back. You know, it was just all, it got a bit obsessive. And I started, you know, a lot of people back then sort of looking into like the New Zealand paddock style grazing, you know, seeing the benefit of block calving and, you know, giving yourself time out and to simplifying things a lot more. And so I started going on to sort of discussion groups. And of course, you know, that sort of leads to like the 3-leaf ryegrass and that whole system. And then at some point, I just thought, well, this is quite hard on the ground. You know, we're being told to literally hammer the grass in, put the nitrogen on, grass comes back. You just continually repeat it all the time. When once it's fallen out, you then reseed it. You know, you got this whole reseeding plan idea. And then I think I was sort of looking into other ways of changing the pasture and getting new seeds. You know, the herbal lay thing was sort of just coming in, I think. And I think some point I watched a video of Joel Salison, American farmer, and he was just sort of going through what he was, you know, been doing for several years. And it just sort of, you know, something just seemed to click, and it just seemed to make sense that what he was saying was what you sort of been thinking. You know, you sort of question yourself, but you never sort of have the confidence to do anything about it, and just things listening to what he was saying. I read, started reading his books, and then started listening to other people that had been doing similar things. Social media, just going to different places, and other people had the same ideas, and just found more information. Reading's probably the biggest way of picking information up, because you're not going to get it fed to you. You've got to go out and look for that sort of information. Yeah, it's not thrown at you. It's not in the magazine.
It's not what you talk in the pub with your mates about, is it really?
Oh no,
you probably think you're a bit weird.
You don't want you don't want to be talking about farming all the time, but it's not skittle matches and that. It's not sort of brought up, but it's not in the farming magazines. Not that you're not going to pick that up from the adverts. And
so at this point you were milking. Were you milking about 150?
Yeah, it's pre-TB. Yeah, we would have been. Yeah. And then that time, I suppose we just typical dairy farm really, 150. Kept our own heifers. Sold a bit of beef. It's hard to think back what the numbers of beef we had. It wasn't very many. We sold calves. We definitely sold calves, and the calf market was reasonably good, like it was back then. And yes, once we hit with TB, we've got to keep the calves. I suppose it was luckily we weren't. We had surplus grass, but of course once you start to build your numbers of young stock up, you start to realise that all this other ground we got has got to suddenly start to work. It can't just be sort of a bit play around and put them over here and forget about them. So we started to get into rotationally grazing the young stock. So you start off giving them 3 or 4 days grass, and then you sort of you think, well, this is working. So you start to give them daily feeds. Oh, my battery's getting low.
Oh, this is not good, Sam.
It's all right. I can I can improvise in a minute. I can plug it in, but I might do that. I'll do it now.
Yeah, maybe do it now.
But James, on that note, which is where do you get the advice from? So you bought it in, didn't you, from a consultant? Do you mean Sam's very much saying that it comes from other farmers also? Where do you get?
Yeah, well all of this, all this sort of regenerative, I feel that we're kind of making it up as we go along, because
that's working.
No one gives you this advice because no one's making any money out of it. And I'm skeptical, but it's like.
I've just improvised a bit.
Oh. Oh.
That's not me.
Joseph, do your job.
That comment has been noted. Thank you, Nicola.
If you just want to finish that point, James, in terms of where the advice comes from or could come from.
Yeah, I think the advice is just speaking to other farmers, and that's why I was quite looking forward to the carbon calling thing, really, because that's a plug you owe me for there, by the way. I think we learn from each other, because obviously we're all reading the books and the guys from America and things like that, but actually what people are doing over here. But when you try and ask your just mainstream fertilizer, or there isn't that many people out there wanting to do it, because what you're trying to prove is not using any product or very little. So there isn't that much independent advice out there, really.
I don't really understand it either.
Yeah. So Sam, can you just go back to your young stock? So you started grouping them up and rotating them.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I was trying to do both as well. I think the dairy we did start to do some different grazing, but and at the same time we had to get young stock to work, and it was easier to possibly mob graze the young stock, as they don't have to leave field every twice a day for milking. But yeah, we started buying a lot more electric fencing, and actually working out how much grass each day they needed then. So I was doing it by sort of consumption rather than using the figures at the time. I wasn't using the software like I am now. Whereas now, we've got plate meters, and I'm using the plate meter a lot more, even trying to get into the satellite side of things. But we're also sizing out the paddocks and sizing out individual cells using software. I don't know if you want me to mention software companies or not.
You can mention software. It's all good. Go.
Yeah, I mean, I use field margin to sort of mark it out. There's obviously AgriNet. A lot of people use that. Just to size things up. Although AgriNet I tend to keep just for the dairy. But yeah, it'd be interesting how the satellite side goes. But with the height of the grass and that, I think that sort of changed gradually, because we were always told, with the discussion groups, 1500, and then, going at, give it under 3 normally. Whereas, I've gone in sort of 4.5, 5, and sort of left 2. And I varied it a lot because I don't think it pays to keep the same residual height all the time. Otherwise, you start to get a pattern going in different years. You've got we had a wet spring, so I moved the cattle around very quickly to avoid, marking up the ground. Whereas now things are, hardening up, and we can put the stocking density up a little bit once the grass gets growing.
So your dairy cows are on herbal lays you've put in?
No, we don't. No? I've never put in a herbal lay because we're all, I suppose it's typical pasture, rolling pasture. It's I reseeded it from when I come out of college, which is just bog standard ryegrass. But some of it hasn't been reseeded. Well, most of the farm hasn't been reseeded.
So what covers are you going in at? Did you say with the cows?
At the moment, we finished the first round with the dairy, so that was anything from 3.5 under. But the in the past, we have gone in the dairy sort of 4.5, and the young stock a bit less. But it just varies on what is there. How you want to leave it, and the actual nature of the grass makes a big difference as well. If you've got too much ryegrass there, it's not worth it. Just goes it just flops down. The permanent grass is that the fields that haven't been reseeded are a lot easier to mob graze. They just stand up. Everything, you've got more quality there. Ryegrass soon loses its quality and just goes flat if you've got too much there.
I think, Liz, have you got a question?
No, I was miming 4,000 kilos of dry matter. Sorry.
It
wasn't very effective mime because you could but
it did come across that effective, Liz. But going back to questions, you did have 2 or 3. You might as well just ask now why there's a bit of a gap. Sam, what growth rates are you getting on your young stock? Or what are they achieving? And what age do you bull them at?
The weights, as in beef, I take it.
Growth rates on your young stock.
Yeah, we just weighed one lot, but we went back to last year. I think depends on what age you're talking about, because smaller calves don't put as much as 20, 15-month-old steers. I mean, we've had growth rates sort of kilo to kilo and a half. The smaller ones normally start off about 0.8, and then as they grow up, they put more on. We only started using weigh cells last year, so it was a bit of fun sort of playing around with that. But now I've got a stick reader. It's working a lot better, a lot more accurate, a lot quicker. We tried that the other day. That seemed to work. So hopefully in a couple of months' time, we'll have some decent readings then.
And what age are you generally trying to get your young stock, in terms of your beef crosses away from, or your surplus?
We're selling them as stores sort of between 20 and 24 months. That's what we can cope with. We can't keep them any longer at the moment. We haven't really got the ground to finish them on. Sort of, there's only so you need more in order to finish, and we would need more ground, or try and make the ground more productive.
The next question, and I'm not sure if this is a personal one because I don't deal with dairy, but do you mind telling us what your yield per cow is?
Yeah, it's at the moment it's somewhere around the 4.5 mark because we've changed over again with feeding rates and that. And last year was a different year. In the past, we've sort of gone from around 6.5 when we were feeding a ton of cake, and now we only feed half a ton. And that has made a difference in yield. But then the more of the yield's coming from the forage, and that is what is important, not the total yield. Yield is what you are yielding from forage.
And you're in organic conversion, aren't you?
Yeah, we're just about to come out of it for the dairy. So the land will be organic next month, and we'll be selling organic milk. It's a bit of a quicker transition with the milk because although the cows aren't technically organic, everything that's gone into them is, and then your milk becomes organic to sell it. And we'll have organic cows born this year.
Then I think just the final question for now, I think, was something Nicola started with as well. Do you have a group of local farmers you can talk to about what you're doing, or do you have to go further afield for your?
Not that further afield, but I mean, certainly not the locals, as in the neighbours around. I mean, my neighbour, he's into his New Zealand paddock raising, but then some of the others are sort of quite traditional, really, that they'll just put cows out in the field and leave them there until they get out. But not all. That's right, their thing, and and I'm not saying our cow don't get out, but it's because everyone's it's the generation thing or not, but everyone gets stuck in this sort of same routine. It's difficult to get away from the sales reps and look elsewhere for information, and unless you're sort of willing to do a bit of reading and sort of.
We have some general questions coming in, but I might save those for the end, and the four of you can answer. I think the last one, kind of to you at the moment, Sam, is can you grow your dairy heifers well enough to be able to bull them at 12 months old?
12 months old?
Well, it's 12 months. I imagine they mean for 24. Well, to calf them down at 2.
15, yeah. Well, for the last 2 years we've grown them without concentrate. I don't think it's made a lot of difference taking the concentrate out because we weren't feeding much in the first place. But it's actually we've been able to keep them at 2-year calving and a lot more consistent height and growth rate than what we would have if we'd just been not, I would say, continuous grazing or whatever you want to call it, because they are getting a daily feed. The same, we run all the dairy heifers and the young stock all in one group, so there's no segregation at that age until we put them to the bull. Everything's treated the same, so they all get moved every day, fresh grass.
And then I suppose this question is for both. It's just come through. Question to both. Time seems to be an issue for finishing beef in age off grass. Why? Why can't you get beef finished at 18 to 24 months? James, you can go first.
Oh, we can. That's what we're doing, but it's getting it consistent and it's getting it even batches. I'm trying to sell to a sort of high-end retail butcher. And he wants so many cattle per week, per month, whatever, and it's a lot more difficult to sort of manage it. Whereas when they're on hard feed in a shed, it's a lot easier to tweak your ration to do things like that. But I'm still learning to sort of to graze and to fatten cattle on grass. So I think, in time we'll get it right, and actually by actually picking different genetics. Picking those bulls, perhaps not the growthiest bulls, but perhaps cattle which lay down fat a bit easier, which will benefit the probably the maternal side of it as well. So just tweaking genetics slightly as well is going to help. But yeah, I mean, we're finishing everything at 24 months, and I think from a meat quality side of it, what we're trying to do is to try and get everything very fat, so we've got a carcass spec of about 4H. And I think that's probably where grass-fed beef gets a bit of a bad reputation. Sorry, because it isn't probably finished, quite well enough, or doesn't lay enough fat down. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Sorry, that was my sister. James, but also, do we need to accept slightly different fat? I know for your target market, you're trying to get them reasonably fat, aren't you? But potentially we can get them finished on grass, but not to a 4L type level.
Yeah, and it depends what the spec wants, isn't it? And you've heard me bang on enough times, Liz, about the Europe grid. We won't go there. We haven't got long enough. And yeah, I don't think it's a different market. And I think people that want grass-fed cattle, grass-finished cattle, probably want a fattier animal anyway.
Joseph, how are we done for questions?
Do you want to continue on, or do you want to?
I just wanted to talk compost, which sounds very hempy.
Love compost.
Slurry versus compost.
So Sam has got a way of dealing with his compost, with his muck, not his compost, makes it into compost. Sam, do you want to quickly explain what your method is?
Yeah, it was just a method I picked up from Joel Salatin. I saw his idea of doing it, which is basically to turn FYM or straw bedding into compost by using pigs. And to start with, I was a bit naive. I just picked up some weaners, gave them some waste milk, put them in the bedding, have the cattle come out, and expect them to work magic. And they did root things around and done their thing. I sent them on, and then at some point, I think must have been one summer, there was a conference up at I think it was Fur Farm Sustainable Food Trust, and Joe Salatin was there. I did manage to grab him for 5 minutes, fighting over, trying to get everyone else out of the way. And I said to him, does this work? Putting whole grain in the bedding with the cattle, can they actually digest it? He told they can, and it obviously depends on the size of the pig, about the turning over and all that.
So every time you bed the cattle down,
so typical straw
put some corn under the straw.
Yeah, so when you go, normally you just go in and straw them up, put the straw over. So just before we put the straw in, we just scatter a bit of corn over the top, and then put the straw on top. So the cattle just go and tread it in, and then in the spring when they go out, it's all there, and the pigs go in. I've got loads of videos of them doing it. We've got 2 groups up there working at the moment, and now they go in, and literally within seconds they're diving in and digging.
And how deep do they go, or how?
Well, I think about a good meter. I mean, obviously, we have got some sows there now, but I think if you had some really hungry coal sows, they would probably go deeper. I mean, if they're hungry, they will go. They always go. They seem to go down rather than trying to eat the bits on top and then work their way down. They prefer to go for the corn that's fermented a lot longer. But there is also a limit to the time you want to leave the corn in there as well, because it will eventually fizzle out. It looks a bit like, I suppose, what some people would at the pre whole crop stage. So you grab out the corn and squeeze it, and it's soft. It's that sort of that's what happens to it.
So how quickly can they kind of turn that into good compost? It's
probably a good 6 weeks. I mean, it depends on how big the pigs are, how long you want to leave them in there for. But
and what were you doing pre-pig with the muck?
Well, doing pretty much what a lot of people do, I guess, is you know, as soon as a cut like that, everyone gets excited and they want to get the tractors out and dig it all out and put it out in a big heap in the field, which is what I got sort of taught, you know, so, oh, come on, let's go and clean the shed out, and there's me putting pigs in there. But you know, the advantage is you don't get a big patch in your field that all grows weeds every year, and you're making use of the shed, because what else is the shed doing over the summer apart from storing machinery? Maybe, I don't know. But you know, the weather's good. Make use of it, and yeah, once the pigs are finished, at the moment we just push it to the end of the building. It carries on steaming for however long you want it to. Then whenever it starts to rain at some point in the summer, we get on and spread it. And we do try and spread it as soon as we can. And it's miles better. I mean, that rather than having this long orange colour straw stuff that sort of sticks on top of the ground and just sort of stays there. It's brown. It's like the stuff you would get in the garden centre in a way. The straw's broken down into smaller pieces, and you can't see them up. And it's all it's like, you know, what compost you would expect it to be.
So you're an accidental pig farmer.
Yeah, well, it's very small numbers, but.
So James, we spoke briefly before about your composting or possible compost future plans.
Yeah, well, on the estate they've got a beautiful Victorian greenhouse and walled gardens, and they're implementing a no-dig sort of market garden, sort of vegetable from there, and they're going to do the whole compost tea and get a compost kettle. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not an expert at any of this. It's very hempy.
Very hempy.
But yeah, and I think they're going to do some experiments in the garden and how they do things and improving the soil. And I think in my farmy type of way, I'll try and replicate that and try and do it on a farm scale thing. Because I think, you know, I don't know what Sam thinks, but a lot of our challenge trying to farm like this is you can read so much and there's so many people doing lots of weird and wonderful stuff, perhaps on a sort of market garden type thing, but trying to do it on a practical, large scale farming method isn't always that easy, because I listen to some guys and it sounds fantastic, but how you make that work on a normal farm, if there is, I think that's the skill of what we're doing, and talking to each other, and I'm fascinated about Sam's compost and might even get a few pigs anyway.
He's got some to sell probably.
Get some coal sows and then get rid of them. I think that's they would do it. But.
And my question: do you feed them anything else? You don't put them any?
No.
Nothing else, just that.
We put them up there it's about a week ago, and they literally gone in, and that's it. Water. We check them every day. But no, apart from that, that's it. And if you go up, normally if you go when they're here in the winter, the ones we had, we'd be feeding them twice a day, and they'd all come up to you, like they do, looking hungry, be fed. But if you go up there now, where they're on the bedding, and they just go to the other end of the building and carry on. They're not interested at all. They're actually happier finding their own food than expecting us to come twice a day or whatever to put food out. Well, it's the same with cows. If you go out with a feeder wagon twice a day, they get used to it. But once they learn to graze, it's using the pig's nose to, their biggest asset really, to do some work while they're here before they go on pork. Like we use cows to harvest grass to turn into milk. We're using pigs rather than just sort of thinking of it as a meat machine that just grows and gets big, and is adding value while they're still alive. That's sort of.
But Nick, do you want to say about your chickens? Are you still doing some pasture raising?
Well, we've got a new batch of chickens arriving 1st of May. So again on the Joel Salatin thing, Renault slightly infatuated with Joel.
We've ordered some chickens as well.
Read his he's got a pastured poultry book. So So for the people listening, what you imagine when you're little and you have a guinea pig or a rabbit in the garden, and every day you move it. Well, we have 50 chickens in like one of those tight cages, and every day we move it in the field, and they do have chicken feed, fattening chicken feed, but they also have fresh grass every day, and every day they're never on their own poo. So
probably spiders as well, and
yeah,
things, yeah.
And
Dung beetles.
And dung
That's what's
beetles.
Yeah.
And we take them to 12 weeks and then kill them, and they are amazing.
Yeah.
And they've had a great life, and it's a much longer life than a normal chicken, and they just do a good job. But what we'd like to try, which is probably the next step, is an egg mobile, but we won't go there now. But Joel Salson's egg mobile idea, where
Yeah, you want to ask Ed White about it.
Yeah, so Ed White's on our list to come on this. So you have a herd of cows, and then the chickens follow the cows.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, they're doing that. Yeah.
But enclosed behind the cows.
No, I don't think are they enclosed, Sam?
I can't remember if he's using netting or not, but I think it's about 2 days behind them. But you want to ask him. I think they've got. Yeah, I can't remember how many. But they've got 2 caravans. But yeah, ask him. He'll
yeah.
update
So that's.
You anyway.
So we did have a comment through. He is using netting.
Oh, he is.
Just 1 or 2 quick questions. I think. Well, Sam was, can you do the same in the sheep shed? What you do in a cattle shed? I imagine that's it. Yes, in terms of the pigs.
Yeah, I would have thought so. I mean, so you mean sheep bedded up in straw, go up, the same thing. I would have thought so. Can't see any issues. I mean, it's going to be different. Imagine it's a drier material, although it depends how much straw you put in. Obviously, cow milk's a little bit softer, so you might have to alter that a little bit. But you're going to use what bedding you've got, what you normally use anyway.
And then
as long as there's some sort of moisture there to sort of ferment the grain, I would have thought, like a lot of these things, until you do it or find someone else that's done it or improve on it, or
they maybe need pigs with a bit of a big nose, like a strong cow.
Yeah, I think here's the right. Yeah, you do need. We've used. I mean, we got saddlebacks and crosses. There's. You wouldn't want the real flat nosed ones, maybe. But, yeah, what they? Oh, like
Cootie. Right, moving on.
Well, just 1 more for Sam and then 1 for James. Just a quick one. What? How do you breed your cattle? Are they New Zealand LIC types?
Yeah, we did use them for quite a few years. Obviously before that we were what everyone else was, the taller black and white version, and we had used Ayrshire's as well previously, and they kept the size down, so we hadn't got too big. And I was also using some British Friesian in between time with the dairy. Now we are pretty much all British Friesian as far as what I buy in, semen wise. Partly because there's a lot bigger gene pool now than what there was 10 years ago. And I did find the New Zealand bred stuff, it was starting to get like a small Holstein or a black and white Jersey, depending on how you look at it. And to sell beef animals from those cows, we could see that we were starting to see the negative results. And you can't have both. You can't have a massive calf that comes out of a little narrow cow. So we decided to sort of keep with the Friesian style animal. A 450 kg, between 450 and 500 kg. Which I think, if you're going to produce milk from grass, you don't want to get much bigger. So it's largely British Friesian at the moment. But everyone's got their
other breeds are available, I think, is what you're trying to say.
I start knocking different breeds, but
Well, we'll just a quick question for
we're on
James.
wet ground, so I don't want to sort of poach it too much.
Yeah, so just one quick question then, more on a beef side. Are you measuring the nutrient density of your beef on grass compared to previous?
No, we don't finish them, but we have killed our own animals.
Sorry, Sam. I think that was. I think that was for James. Sorry, sorry, you're on.
Yeah, well, we're not. I mean, I don't know actually how you measure the nutrient density. But I mean, the beef, we worked alongside this butcher for quite a few years, and he challenged me to try and produce, the best beef, because his argument was that there was no one out there producing 24-month-old beef with proper finish. And we went back and forth a lot of times, a lot of different carcasses, and we somewhat got it right. And they're the sort of connoisseurs of what is right. And I think once we can actually prove that grass-fed meat has got a far higher nutrient density and the health properties and benefits of that, we're onto a winner. I mean, I think we're there already as far as in theory, but we actually need to try and find a measurement for nutrient density. And I think with all food, not just with beef, but with vegetables, with cereals, and I think probably regenerative ag is at the forefront of trying to find this out anyway.
I think there is studies out there in terms of grass-based and the difference it has, especially around I'm trying to remember my university teaching. I think it's CLA, conjugated linoleic fat, and omega-3 acid. Oh, there you go. I was so close. So I think there is evidence out there.
Fat doesn't start with an A. Carry on.
Well, we're all wondering what salmon you're eating, what your sister brought you. Anyways, so there is studies out there, and if you look at the PGI in the southwest in England, for example, West Country beef and West Country lamb, that is based around the differences a grass-based diet gives to the meat and the slightly different omega levels. So I think the research is probably already there.
I think the slight challenge a lot of the time is it does increase the levels, but not to a level where we can make a claim. So you see
the facts get in the way of a good story, Liz.
Say again?
Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
No, but you see it in eggs where there is very much a claim, but there's a lot more potential manipulation of diet, but it is at a constant level where it can be claimed on the box, basically.
Yeah. But also is what equates as grass-fed. At the moment, there's no legal definition of grass-fed, and anything can be classed as grass-fed pretty much. So, I know Pasture for Life people are working on trying to get, certification and legal things. So, that's probably another topic in itself about what constitutes grass-fed, really.
We have one more question for Sam, and I'm not sure if it's personal. He's asking what the size of your sheds are. Sheds.
I missed that.
So the question is, are you cleaning out your sheds throughout the winter at all? Because if you only do a metre in routing, do you need big sheds then for that volume?
I guess they're that size for that. We have in the past. I know we did. I think it was where it was down to the numbers, where we've increased the size of the shed by knocking things out the way. I know we used to keep on a lot smaller area, and I think that's helped with the cattle welfare anyway, and with ventilation. There's only so many cattle you can put in those sort of sheds, and you can, rent your sheds in the winter, or it's not going to be as good left out there in the rain and the cold and the frost. You're not going to get such good nutrients, especially if it's a wet winter. So ideally, you want shed space.
Sam, we talked briefly on the phone last week about how when you went to the Real Oxford Farming Conference.
About 3 years. Yeah.
But it was you would have gone to that. You would have probably stuck out a bit like a sore thumb, possibly.
I don't whether Well, you don't look like you stand out. You just feel like you stand out at Sore Thumb. I think they're very welcoming people. That it's certainly not suit and tie, which is possibly what the other conference might be. You could rock up as you are now. No one would worry at all.
But when I'm
very busy, a lot of people, and a lot of not the sort of people you expect to find at the dairy event.
No.
If you get, what I mean.
But it's like when you mentioned, James, your hemp underpants. It's you've both kind of pushed yourselves, and you've probably been in meetings where you have felt maybe a little bit not maybe at ease, or like possibly the odd one out in your heads. And I just wonder how you've dealt with that, and just how you've coped with that, really. And has it been
I went to the Oxford Real Farming Conference this year, and I felt quite overdressed because I'd never seen so many piercings and top knots at a farmer meeting in my life, and it was great. And then there was a huge plethora of people, and it makes you realise, that you go to any farmer meeting and it's a lot of brown and green and tweed and all stuff like that. And yeah, it was quite refreshing actually to see that there's a whole. And they weren't necessarily farmers; they were general public interested in the food that they eat. And I think that's what we've probably forgotten that we're doing as farmers. I think we've become so commodity driven, and it kind of dawned on me the first time that I slaughtered one of the animals in front of the butchers, and I dare say, but I got slightly emotional in the fact that I realised that I was producing food, not beef cattle. Most of the time we drop them off at the slaughterhouse or the market or anything like that, and there's no sort of connect with either the chef or the butcher or the nutrient content of what we're producing. And I think we've lost that. I think, hopefully all this will and even in this crazy world that we're in at the moment, I think people are starting to realise that what they eat and the connection between farming and food, and we need to do it the other way. Us as farmers need to realise that we're not just producing a commodity, and the more the merrier, and and treat it like food.
Yeah. Sam, have you got anything? Sorry, go on.
I'm just interested from a James perspective in terms of how much time would you now spend engaging either with butchers or people in the supply chain? Do you mean would you spend half a day a week or not quite that much? Are you making quite an active decision to do it?
At the moment, not a lot.
Well, obviously because you locked down, but
in the past, and I think I was always kind of poo-pooing those people that are trying to do direct selling and things like that. And I looking back, if I'd probably spent more time marketing and working with butchers and chefs rather than perhaps focusing on as much on genetics, I'd probably be in a far better place. And I think probably from a mental health point of view, it's a real uplift when I've got chefs sending me pictures of them cooking my steaks and their kids eating my steaks. And I think because we us as farmers, we do feel quite isolated, and when you're just producing a commodity product that goes, it's almost faceless, isn't it? No, you never ever hear any feedback or the good, the bad. We might have been producing the best beef for the last 20 years, but all it just goes to the abattoir, it gets mixed up, it probably gets wherever. So I think we need to get that link back, and it'll probably make us feel better about ourselves.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Liz, have you got any burning questions?
I suppose I'm sort of interested in the sort of top tips of where of the sort of 40 odd people that are on the call, where do you think people could start? Where is that first step along the way, really? What is it? Books? Is it talking to people? Is it a combination of factors? What do you think is the important first step?
I think definitely reading and research. And then just finding sort of an area where you could experiment and trial things. Obviously talking to other people that might be interested in it as well. I think definitely getting a connection like that with other farmers.
Yeah, and I think realising there is no wrong. As farmers, since I left Harper, well over 20 years ago, but we're kind of told what's acceptable. You're a good farmer if you turn up onto someone's farm and they've got loads of concrete, a green tractor and a green feeder wagon and a straw chopper and loads of concrete and modern buildings. In someone's eyes, that's what a good farmer is. But actually, you might be going broke, but have all the tack and all the buildings and the concrete. And I think, with our fields, you're only ever judged as a farmer about what someone sees over your hedge or what you put in market or anything like that. And I think we're so scared of making a mistake. I've got a field that I've outwintered cattle on, and it's right by a road. And I was dreading it, what people think, and it looked a mess, and there's docks coming in it, and now I just don't care. I'm quite happy when people comment, because actually it's all healed, the grass has regrown, and it looks fantastic. But I think, we are proud, and you don't want to be accused of being a bit of a wacko or anything like that. But I think is not being bothered about making mistakes either, because you've got to learn from them. But we all care a little bit about what people think, but perhaps we shouldn't. I don't know.
And do you think it's coming from being a bit older? Do you think that helps?
Yeah, definitely.
Become less bothered or not?
Yeah, definitely. When you're younger, you're trying to prove yourself to the world, I guess, and worry what people think. And now I guess I've gone past caring. I'm an embarrassing dad, and so I don't mind doing it, But yeah, I think that there is an element of we have to comply to a norm. And
I think with a lot of the people you speak to about this, a lot of it is about not necessarily actively wanting to be disruptive, but are very happy in that disruptive place. They're not. If they wanted to be part of a gang, they wouldn't be doing some of the techniques they're now doing. So it is that need to be disruptive is quite a common sort of factor in all of this.
Yeah, it is a strange one about just complying to the status quo, really, and no one wants to be judged as a bad farmer, do they? And so you're only ever judged of what your crops and what your cattle look like, isn't it?
And as you say, it's the metrics or the way we judge, isn't it? It's based on kit or equipment, because for so long that's how subsidy were driving it, wasn't it? In terms of the biggest tractor, the biggest kit. It's now what you're seeing is people are now competing who can have the smallest tractor to do the work, because it means the soils are good. So
farm businesses are unique, aren't they, in the sense that no one ever looks at our accounts. The only people,
even some farmers don't look at their accounts. But
it's usually the accountant or the bank manager, and they usually bring you bad news if you have to pay tax or anything like that. So any other business, if you're doing well or badly, you're judged from what someone sees on Company's House. But with farmers, you can be looking to do the best job in the world, but quietly be going broke.
And in terms of finances, has the move been a positive thing? I'm hoping you're going to say it has.
Yeah, going back when James started, he mentioned about the organic thing, and that first year, you think, what's going on and that, and then once you sort of we found it using less inputs, all of a sudden that when the income comes in, it just stays in the account longer. We've got more multiple incomes coming in. Although we've gone out spending on different diversified projects as well, like a lot of people are, just to keep a steady income coming through. But it's seeing more of that income coming in and not going out in so many different. You could go mad. all the advertising we get chucked at us, or I say get chucked, you don't have to, you can sort of, ignore it in a way. And I think you can get, although there is a danger of ignoring things too much and going off on your own a bit too much and not being involved. I think there is a danger that you can sort of get into your own little bubble. It's like you get two bubbles. You got your bubble and then the big bubble everyone else is in. So you got to try. It's like the two conferences, isn't it? You got to try and merge together a little bit.
No, definitely.
And involve all the environmentalists and otherwise what it's like on Twitter. It gets a bit dear George and
Joseph, have you got any questions?
Yes. It's starting to kick off. They're starting to debate whether there's such a thing to weed or not to weed. That is becoming the question. So a bit like what other farmers think. So for weeds like docks and thistles, what is your kind of thought process and I think everyone can answer this really, in the ReGenAg world? Do you teach animals to graze them, or do you use home brace to spray and stunt them? And we did have a comment back where there's no such thing. Docks are a vital source of minerals.
I'd agree with the last one a bit more. They're just plants at the end of the day, and they're there for a reason. But the thing of docks, well, look at a typical pasture field. Where are most of the docks? They're normally in the gateway. If you want to create a field of docks, send your cows out to poach the field as much as possible, and then leave it to grow, and that it'll be full of docks. Thistles, I think where we've had most success with thistles is trying to graze it as tight as possible and create a bit of bare soil, a few scuff marks, and then creeping thistles will love that. The bigger thistles, which we call ball thistles, some people call them spear thistles, tend to like a lot of free nitrogen lying around. I like kicking them out the ground if I see a few, but not really. We've noticed by increasing the stocking density in the summer, the creeping thistles have pretty much been knocked out. But they're not there. A few knocking around is not going to cause any issues. But of course, I don't know. It's on an arable side of things, it's a bit different.
How are you liking the weeds, James? Are you learning to love the look of them?
Yeah, I mean, it is funny in the sense that we're planting all these herbal lays. We're trying to plant chicory and plantain, and you're a good progressive farmer if you can boast that you've got a load of herbs in your field. But then, if you've got a load of docks in your field, they're probably doing a better job than any of the chicory and the plantain for actually doing something good to the soil. So I'm trying to sort of get it in my head now that I haven't got docks. I've just got Shropshire chicory. And I might start selling seed before long as well, if anyone wants to buy any. But it is a weird one, and trying to graze them. I mean, young stock, you have to keep young stock incredibly hard to graze docks. But yeah, cows will graze docks without too much problem, really. I mean, they're the last thing in the paddock they graze, but they will graze them eventually.
There's a few other comments and questions. I suppose maybe this is one for you, James, as well, if you want to try it. So both can answer. Are you using stewardship? So I take this means stewardship schemes with grazing systems, and how is it working for you? I think for those people that maybe are on the call from different countries, environmental management schemes, and are you able to work them around your farming system?
Yeah, we're in a HLS scheme. So we've got a lot of hill land and moorland and pretty much every type of land. So yeah, we're in a HLS scheme, and then we've just taken on another 350 acres as well. That's going into a mid-tier agreement, and it's amazing actually. All these sort of agreement options are just almost music to my ears in the sense of this is how we're farming anyway. And I think the new Elm scheme, which is obviously replacing the whole payment structure going forward, from what they're saying, the way that we're all farming regenerative ag, we will get the most from that scheme. So if we can prove that we're making money farming, and then take all the additional top-up benefits that are enhancing the environment as well. I think it's a real win-win, and I think there's people now in DEFRA or Natural England who are really taking on board whether you call it regenerative attitude or whatever it is, but farming in harmony with the environment is right up the street, and I think we'll benefit from that massively.
I'm just conscious of the time, Joseph.
All right, we'll run through the last few questions.
Okay.
Quick one, James. Do you grow any cover crops on your arbour land? And if so, what have you found to be the best varieties?
Yeah, well, we're just starting out, so we just put everything down to grass that was in arable, and now we've taken on this extra block of 300 acres. I'm going to try. I can't quite get my head round how I can put grass into an arable system without ploughing it. So I'm going to try and do a no-till system, but just using cover crops. So we're going to put things like a rye and a vetch in, and then perhaps put stubble turnips or a forage crop over the winter and do things like that. But I'm learning, and I'm open to suggestions, and I need some probably advice really on actually how to try and do an organic no-till system. Some say it can't be done, but
Sam, haven't you done that?
What's that?
No.
Direct
Have you done that? No.
It's in direct drilling.
Yeah. Didn't you put some vetch in? No.
Yeah, we put some oats and vetch into pasture. I mean, it was very wet. That's the only. I mean, last autumn was like. I mean, yeah, it's there, but it's probably how well it took. But the grass is I mean, we were going to use it as a forage crop anyway, but the grass and clover, the pasture and the rest of it is sort of coming on with it. The idea was obviously to graze it hard and allow the annuals to almost overtake the pasture, but because it was so wet, I think we weren't able to graze it down as hard after germination. But it probably make a fantastic forage crop. But we sort of need to have another go this, in the autumn. We could have had a go this spring with it. We're sort of just keeping an eye on it. I think a lot of people are trying it, and I think the more people that try it on different soils and different areas of the country, the more likely you are to see more of a success of it in this country. And like it has been out in Australia, with the pasture crop in Colin size.
Yeah.
Just because I'm conscious of time, I let Liz and Nicola can answer this one.
Oh God.
It's the first question we got, and you should always reward the person who made the effort to actually start the questions going. So, do you think there's anything ag colleges, universities can do to improve awareness of low input systems, to improve margins, soil health earlier, so that it helps farmers to make these changes?
I think they are way behind. I don't even think they're on the ladder.
Oh, you're saying yes, there is something they can do.
There's loads they can do, but they're not. The ones I've been to, and they're not even. It's not even on their agenda. Sorry, it's very cynical. I'm catching James's cynical bug, but it's.
Well, we've got Harper students coming out now. And it's quite mad. I sort of catch myself talking to my 20-year-old self, and I can't believe the stuff that's coming out of my mouth now. But yeah, it is. I think there's an appetite for change, and although they necessarily wouldn't be the straight ag students, they've come more from an environment angle. I think it is catching on. I really do.
And I think a lot of it it's about visits, isn't it, or where they get exposure to. So it's the more farms and other way of thinking they can be exposed to, so farm visits or their placement year or anything like that, it's going to shift. But there's a lot of information in colleges that is based on information probably 20, 30 years ago. I'm not saying it will. I am saying it's bad. I'm just saying everything needs a bit of a refresh. But you could argue, and we heard today, which is a lot from a consultancy perspective, a lot of the consultants are out of date. So at the moment, the farmers who are doing it are leading the way in terms of information, and they're very generally quite keen to share, but it's about the students or consultants, whoever, being willing to go and listen, isn't it? That's the challenge.
So just,
a lot of trial work. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm conscious of time, but this last question that came in, I think, is a good one. Have either of the speakers found a massive stigma with what you're doing with the older generation or staff when trying to implement things?
No.
You're spoiling there, James.
Should we get the positive point from Sam first?
No,
Yeah.
not massively. I suppose it depends on how you go about it. I mean, there's always it depends who you're working with, and I mean, Dad's sort of been a lot better than perhaps what others have been. You can, until you've got the right idea in your head, you can push things too much, but you've got to push things a little bit and get on and do it yourself, as far as on a family farm sort of situation goes. And everyone else, well, in and around, and when you mention this stuff, sometimes you're a bit reluctant to mention it. When you do, sometimes you get it thrown back in your face, and other times, people just listen, and if they listen, they don't.
What's your experience, James?
Yeah, I mean, if I had £1 for every time someone in the older generation said, you're not doing anything new, we've done all this before, it does drive me mad. And I know there is some, reasoning in that, but, I do think, the older generation just want to conform. They're stuck in a bit of a rut about, we have to feed the nation after the war, and maximum yield and maximum productivity, and where's the world going to feed itself from, and everything like that. And you realise that the world can feed itself by farming in this way, just by taking a slightly different stance. But yeah, I think it's gaining momentum. But there's still a lot of cynical people out there.
So finally, then, I'm not sure if this is the question.
Sorry, Joseph, just on that point, I remember Michael Blanche might not be on the call, but he made a really good point, which is when he started rotationally grazing on his farm, he was dealing with loads of cynical people, and so you have to go through that. And then he was finding that now he talks to ReGenAg people, he's the cynical person. So there's always, you have to challenge your thinking, and it is about exposure, and it's not, as I said before, it's not necessarily about being wrong, it's just different, isn't it? And views, challenging your view by speaking to a range of people is always valuable, and a bit of cynicism is healthy, James.
Yeah,
a bit.
Finally, then, in terms of questions, I'm not sure, is this a question resulted to the chat or for wider discussion, but we were asked, can we start a support group? I don't know if that's because what you've been through in the last hour and a half or wider. So I think it's more of, and then obviously, can people share Twitter handles? Because I think some people would like to talk to each other after this. I think probably I'll pick it up with you, Nicola, in terms of GDPR being what it is, but maybe an email around, and if people want to share, we can get their details and share a list around.
Yeah, they've all got my work email, because that's what I sent the invite on. So if they want to contact me, and I'll do what I can.
Some have already shared it on the question side. I imagine other people might like to. So
because everyone on the call is on Twitter, so you just got to find each other.
That doesn't sound stalkerish whatsoever.
And our ambition is, if people like it, that we will happily do things like this again. So the support group will be things like this.
And what we'd like to do is probably do them while we're in lockdown. Take advantage of your availability. Boredom. Yeah. So we could do we could do not every week, but Tuesday night therapy sessions.
Can we bring all our problems?
Yeah, well, we could have a
late night version from 11 o'clock.
The blue zone. Anyway, are we ready to wrap it up?
Possibly.
Yeah. Sam, James, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Haven't they been wonderful? Joseph, thank you too.
You're welcome. Sorry, hold on.
Can we see your face? So email me any feedback, any ideas. We've got Ed, the chicken man, who's Sam's neighbour, is
Well, he's about half hour away. Yeah. Somerset.
He's keen to come on. So if we just need one more.
Yeah,
so anyway, I'm rambling on. I'm going to stop. So thank you all for listening to us. Thank you two for talking. And Liz, say something.
We're ever optimistic that carbon calling will continue on the 18th of August, and don't worry, you will hear about that a lot more in next week, Tuesday.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Shame that
it will happen.
It
not
will
this
happen.
year. No, maybe not this year, definitely next year.
There'll be a bar, and you'll have to wear hemp pants to be at the bar.
There should be a competition for the most hemp.
We're losing listeners now. We better go.
Thanks very much. Bye for now.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.